She walked into the leasing office wearing simple jeans and a plain jacket, holding nothing but a folder and a quiet smile. The clerk took one look at her and laughed, actually laughed, before telling her she couldn't afford so much as a broom closet in that building. What that clerk didn't know was that by 9 o'clock the next morning, she wouldn't just be leasing a space in that building. She'd own every single floor of it, including the desk he was sitting behind. Before we go further, hit subscribe. The way this story ends will make you want to watch it twice. The leasing office on the ground floor of the Ashford Tower gleamed with polished marble and floor-to-ceiling windows, the kind of space designed to intimidate anyone who wasn't already comfortable with money. Dana Whitmore stepped through the glass doors just after 11 in the morning, dressed simply. Dark jeans, a plain grey jacket, sneakers that had clearly seen years of wear. She carried a slim folder under one arm and nothing else. No designer bag, no flashy jewelry, just quiet, unhurried confidence. Behind the reception desk sat Trevor Lang, mid-30s, slicked back hair, an expensive watch he made sure was visible whenever he gestured. He looked up as Dana approached, his eyes performing a quick, dismissive sweep, shoes to jacket to face, the kind of assessment some people make in half a second and never bother questioning. "Can I help you?" he asked, tone already flat with disinterest. "I'm here about the available commercial space on the 14th floor, Dana said, voice calm and clear. Trevor's eyebrows lifted slightly, an almost theatrical display of surprise. "The 14th floor, that's our premium executive suite. Starting lease is $42,000 a month." "I'm aware," Dana said simply. Trevor let out a short laugh, glancing toward his colleague at the next desk, as if inviting her to share the joke. "Look, I don't mean to be rude, but you can't afford this. This building isn't really built for—" He paused, choosing his next words with visible amusement. "For someone in your, let's say, price range." The office around them went quiet. A woman waiting nearby lowered her magazine, ears clearly tuning in. Dana's expression didn't shift. She'd heard some version of this sentence more times in her life than she could count. The assumption dressed up as helpfulness, the condescension disguised as practicality. "You don't know my price range," she said evenly. Trevor smirked, leaning back in his chair. "I've worked leasing for 8 years. I think I have a pretty good read on who walks through that door, and who's actually serious about a space like this." "Is that so?" Dana said. Not a question, more of a quiet observation. "Look," Trevor continued, softening his tone into something even more insulting than his previous bluntness. "There are other buildings, other options, more suited to your budget. I'd hate to waste your time showing you something you can't actually lease." Dana set her folder gently on the counter. "I'm not here to lease the 14th floor," she said. Trevor blinked, momentarily confused. "Then why?" "I'm here," Dana said, opening the folder and sliding a single document across the counter. "Because, as of 9 tomorrow morning, I won't be leasing anything in this building." Trevor glanced down at the document, his smirk faltering for the first time. "I'll be signing the closing paperwork," Dana continued, "to purchase it, all 22 floors, including this desk." The color drained slowly from Trevor's face as his eyes scanned the document again, disbelief warring with dawning horror. "This building," Dana said quietly, "the one you just told me I couldn't afford." Trevor stared at the document, hands trembling slightly as he lifted it for a closer look. A letter of intent, signed, notarized, bearing the letterhead of a law firm he recognized instantly, one of the city's most prestigious real estate practices. "This has to be a mistake," he said, though his voice had lost all its earlier confidence. "This says the buyer is Whitmore Holdings." "That's correct," Dana said. "You're Whitmore?" Trevor asked, disbelief cracking through every syllable. "Dana Whitmore," she confirmed, CEO. The woman who had been listening nearby lowered her magazine completely now, phone quietly rising to record. Trevor's colleague at the next desk, a young woman named Priya, had gone very still, eyes wide, clearly recognizing the name from somewhere far above her daily responsibilities. "Whitmore Holdings," Priya said slowly, almost to herself. That's the group that's been in negotiations with corporate for the past 4 months. Trevor's head snapped toward her. What? It was in the internal memo last week, Priya said carefully, not quite meeting his eyes. A private buyer was finalizing acquisition of the Ashford Tower. Nobody said who. Dana watched this unfold with quiet patience. No satisfaction in her expression. Just the calm certainty of someone who had lived through this exact scene more times than she cared to remember, in more buildings than she cared to name. I've been coming to this building for the past 6 weeks, she said. Site inspections, meetings with the current owners, walkthroughs with my architects, always dressed exactly like this. She gestured to her simple jeans and jacket, always carrying nothing more than a folder. Trevor's mouth opened, then closed, no words emerging. Nobody in this building ever recognized me, Dana continued. Not once, because nobody expected the person purchasing 22 floors to walk in wearing sneakers instead of Louboutins. I didn't know, Trevor said quietly, the words feeling small and inadequate, even as he said them. You didn't need to know who I was, Dana said, echoing something she'd said to men just like him, more times than she wished were true. You needed to treat me with basic respect regardless. That's the part that seems to be so difficult for people like you to understand. Trevor's colleague, Priya, cleared her throat gently. Ms. Whitmore, is there anything we can… Actually, Dana said, turning to her with a softer expression, yes. I'd like you to pull the full staff roster for this building. Every leasing associate, every front desk employee, every maintenance worker. Priya nodded quickly, already reaching for her computer. Trevor's stomach dropped. Why would you need the full roster? Dana turned back to him, her expression calm, unreadable. Because tomorrow morning, when the ownership transfer becomes official, she said, I'm going to need to know exactly who's staying on my team. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication neither Trevor nor anyone else in the room could misinterpret. And who isn't? She added quietly. Trevor's breath caught audibly. Ms. Whitmore, please, he started, voice rising with genuine panic now. I have a family, this job. I understand you have a family, Dana said, cutting him off gently but firmly. I also understand that in the past 6 weeks, I watched you treat at least 3 other visitors to this building with the exact same dismissive attitude you just showed me. Trevor's face went pale. You were watching? I told you, Dana said. I've been here many times, quietly, observing how this building actually operates when the owners aren't in the room. She reached into her folder again, pulling out a slim tablet, tapping the screen a few times before turning it toward him. On the screen was security footage, grainy but clear enough, showing Trevor turning away an elderly black man in a modest suit 2 weeks earlier, waving him off with barely concealed impatience. Another clip showed him rolling his eyes at a young Hispanic couple inquiring about a smaller office suite, mockingly suggesting they might want to check Craigslist instead. This isn't about one comment you made to me today, Dana said quietly. This is a pattern, and patterns don't happen by accident. Priya, still at her desk, had gone completely silent, eyes fixed on her screen, clearly having pulled up something relevant. Ms. Whitmore, she said carefully, there are 7 documented complaints against Trevor's conduct over the past 18 months. All were filed with previous ownership. None were ever formally investigated. Trevor's legs seemed to weaken beneath him as he gripped the edge of the desk. 7, Dana repeated, letting the number settle in the quiet office. 7 people who walked through those doors and were told, in one way or another, that they didn't belong here, that they couldn't afford to be here, that this building, this opportunity, wasn't built with them in mind. She looked directly at Trevor now, her voice softening slightly, though no less firm. Do you know what all 7 of those complaints have in common, Trevor? He shook his head slowly, unable to speak. Neither did the previous owners, Dana said, because nobody ever bothered to look. She closed the tablet and set it gently on the counter beside the folder. Tomorrow, when I take ownership of this building, she continued, I'm not just changing who signs the checks. I'm changing how every single person who walks through those doors is treated, regardless of what they're wearing, what car they drove, or what assumptions someone behind this desk decides to make in half a second. The office had gone completely silent, every employee within earshot absorbing the weight of what was unfolding. "As for you," Dana said, turning her attention fully back to Trevor, "I have a decision to make, and I'd like to hear something from you first." Trevor swallowed hard, his voice barely above a whisper. "What? What do you want to hear?" Dana's answer would determine not just his future at Ashford Tower, but something far more important, whether he was capable of understanding exactly what he'd done. Dana studied him for a long moment, the office holding its breath around them. "I want to hear the truth," she said finally. "Not an apology crafted to save your job. The actual truth about why you looked at me and decided, within seconds, that I couldn't afford to be here." Trevor's hands trembled slightly against the counter. He opened his mouth twice before any words came out. "I don't have a good answer," he admitted quietly. "I saw jeans, sneakers, no entourage, no assistant, nothing that matched what I expected someone signing a $42,000 lease to look like." "And what does that look like exactly?" Dana asked. Trevor hesitated, clearly hearing how the answer would sound before he even said it. "I don't know. Someone in a suit. Someone who looked like they belonged in a building like this." "Someone who looked like you, maybe," Dana said quietly. The silence that followed was heavier than anything spoken aloud. "I've built 3 companies from nothing," Dana said, her voice steady but carrying real weight now. "I've sat across from bankers who wouldn't return my calls until my assistant called using a different name. I've walked into rooms where security asked me to use the service entrance because they assumed I couldn't possibly be there for the meeting on the top floor." She paused, letting the words settle. "Every single time, Trevor, I had a choice. I could let it break something in me, or I could let it sharpen exactly who I was going to become, and exactly what I was going to build once I got there." Trevor lowered his head, genuine shame visible in his posture for the first time. "I'm not telling you this so you'll feel sorry for me," Dana continued. "I'm telling you because I need you to understand that the moment you decided I couldn't afford this building, you weren't just being rude to one woman in jeans. You were repeating a pattern that has cost people opportunities, dignity, and respect for longer than either of us has been alive." "I understand," Trevor said quietly. "I do. I don't know how to fix something I did in 5 seconds without even thinking about it." "That's actually the right question," Dana said, something shifting slightly in her expression. "Because the answer isn't complicated. You start by thinking. Every time. Before you speak, before you assume, before you decide who deserves your respect and who doesn't." She reached into her folder one final time, pulling out a second document. "This is a formal retraining and probationary agreement," she said, sliding it across the counter. 90 days, direct supervision, mandatory bias training. And if there is a single additional complaint during that period, verified or not fully investigated the way the previous 7 were, your employment ends immediately." Trevor stared at the document, disbelief crossing his face. "You're not firing me?" "I'm giving you exactly what nobody gave the 7 people before you," Dana said. "A real chance to prove who you actually are, once someone is finally paying attention." Trevor picked up the pen with shaking hands, signing his name slowly, deliberately, as if the weight of the moment had finally settled into something real. But as Dana turned to leave, she paused, looking back one final time. "One more thing," she said. Trevor looked up, uncertain what else could possibly come next. Dana's expression softened, just slightly. "Those 7 people," she said, "the ones who were turned away. I want their contact information pulled from the old visitor logs, and I want each of them personally invited back, with a formal apology and first right of refusal on any space in this building they're interested in, at founder's rate." Trevor blinked, clearly not expecting this. "Founder's rate? That's significantly below market." "I'm aware," Dana said. "I didn't build 3 companies by only thinking about margins, Trevor. I built them by remembering exactly what it felt like to be turned away, and making sure, wherever I had the power to do it, that the door stayed open for the next person." She turned to Priya. You mentioned you'd read the internal memo about this acquisition. I'd like to know more about you, actually. Your role, your background, how long you've been with the company. Priya straightened, surprised. I've been here 2 years. Leasing associate, but I mostly handle the paperwork side. I don't get much client interaction. Why not? Dana asked. Priya hesitated, glancing briefly at Trevor before answering. Trevor handles most of the walk-in clients. I think he thought I wasn't polished enough for the front-facing role. Dana's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Is that so? The next morning, exactly as promised, Dana Whitmore signed the closing documents, transferring full ownership of Ashford Tower to Whitmore Holdings. The paperwork was clean, formal, and utterly unremarkable on paper. 22 floors, 1 signature, 1 new name on the deed. But inside the building, the changes were anything but ordinary. Priya was promoted to senior leasing director within the week, her quiet competence finally given the platform it had always deserved. Trevor completed his 90-day probation without a single additional complaint. The beginning, however imperfect, of someone finally choosing to think before assuming. Of the 7 people who had once been turned away, 5 returned. 2 declined politely, having long since found spaces elsewhere. But the 5 who walked back through those glass doors were greeted not by dismissive assumptions, but by genuine welcome, including the elderly black man from the security footage, who signed a lease for a small consulting office on the 3rd floor, shaking Dana's hand with quiet, grateful dignity. Dana Whitmore never publicized the story. No press release, no triumphant social media post. She simply went back to building what she'd always built: spaces, opportunities, and second chances for people the world had too quickly decided didn't belong. Because for Dana, the real victory was never about owning the building. It was about making sure that once she did, nobody who walked through those doors would ever again be told, in word or in silence, that they couldn't afford to belong.